the Syrian Civil War, one of the most devastating conflicts of the 21st century. A war that began with peaceful protests and escalated into a brutal conflict, engulfing an entire nation in chaos. This is the story of how a small act of defiance by a 14-year-old boy became the catalyst for a devastating war, set against the backdrop of a divided society. Syria, a country with a rich history and diverse culture, is home to a complex tapestry of ethnic and religious groups. The majority of the population, around 76%, are Sunni Muslims, while approximately 14% are Shia Muslims, including the Alawites, a Shia sect. The country's president, Bashar al-Assad, hails from the Shia Muslim community. His rise to power was marked by a promise of modernization, but over time his rule became increasingly authoritarian. In the spring of 2011, inspired by the Arab Spring, peaceful protests erupted in Syria. In the southern city of Daraa, a group of children, including a 14-year-old boy, wrote anti-government slogans on their school wall. This simple act of defiance sparked a nationwide uprising. The children were arrested and subjected to horrific torture. The young boy and his friends had their nails pulled out and were electrocuted. This brutality shocked the nation and fueled widespread outrage. The news of the children's torture spread rapidly, igniting protests across the country. What began as a demand for justice became a broader call for political change. The government's violent crackdown only intensified the unrest. As the protests escalated, so did the violence. The Free Syrian Army emerged, formed by defected soldiers and civilians united against the regime. Syria descended into a brutal civil war, with various factions, including Islamist groups, vying for control. In the chaos of war, extremist groups saw an opportunity to gain power. Among them, ISIS quickly rose to prominence, using brutal tactics to establish control over large territories. ISIS's actions, including public executions and widespread atrocities, drew international condemnation and intervention. Their presence in Syria added a new layer of complexity to the conflict. The Syrian Civil War has exacted a horrific human toll. Over 500,000 people have lost their lives, and millions have been displaced. Cities once vibrant have been reduced to rubble, and families have been torn apart. Amidst the devastation, there are countless stories of resilience and survival. Families fleeing the violence, children growing up in refugee camps, and humanitarian workers risking their lives to provide aid, all highlight the enduring human spirit. The Syrian Civil War became a battleground for global powers. Bashar al-Assad's government, supported by Russia and Iran, faced opposition from rebel groups backed by various international actors, including the United States and Turkey. Despite numerous diplomatic efforts and attempts at ceasefires, the war raged on. The international community struggled to find a resolution, as the conflict's complexity and the competing interests of various actors made peace elusive. As the war enters its second decade, the situation in Syria remains dire. While some areas have seen a return to relative stability, the scars of war are deep. The path to recovery is long and uncertain. Yet amidst the devastation, there are stories of hope and resilience. Syrians are working to rebuild their lives and communities, driven by a desire for a better future. The Syrian Civil War is a stark reminder of how quickly a nation's fate can change. What started with a simple act of defiance by a 14-year-old boy spiraled into a conflict that reshaped a country and impacted millions of lives. As we look to the future, we must remember the lessons of this tragedy and strive for a world where peace and justice prevail.